15, in the first part of this story that we covered last week, we see the son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son." When he came to his senses, this boy humbled himself. To go back and admit what he had done wrong, to go back and put himself in a position of servitude. In fact, he went back to his father to make himself a slave to his father. He had an attitude, not just, these are not empty words here when he says, "I'm no longer worthy to be your son." When he was in that pigsty feeding the pigs and wanting to eat the pods that the pigs were getting because he was in such a lowly position, he said, "You know what? The servants of my father are in a better place in life than I am. I should go back and just work for my dad." And he went back with no expectation after what he had asked for and received from his father and what he'd done for it. He went back with no expectation of being brought back in as a son, but he came and said, "I do not deserve to be your son." He came to make himself a slave to his father because slaves were better off. Servants were better off than he was. He didn't ask for restoration. He just asked for mercy. He knew he didn't deserve it. But he got both mercy and restoration. See, humbling ourselves doesn't mean humiliating ourselves. It's just recognizing our true state. He didn't humiliate himself. He didn't go out and make some kind of public confession to the community. He didn't go out and take out an ad in the paper and say, "What a wretched person am I." He went privately back to his father and asked him to just receive him as a servant. He put himself in a position not to say, "I deserve to be taken back by you," as he had first had a position to say, "I deserve my inheritance." He didn't go back with that kind of an attitude. He went back with an attitude that says, "Anything that you give me, I will consider a gift, because I don't deserve any of it." Grace is about putting others first. This son put his father in first place. He knew his father to be a just man. He knew his father to be a caring person. And he said, "You know, I have not been that to him as a son. I don't deserve to be his son. I'm going to elevate my father to a position that he deserves, that he always deserved, and that I never gave him." He humbled himself before his father. He put his father's position above his pride. And he received grace from his father, because grace runs both ways. When the humility comes, the grace flows. Grace is about putting others first. This father put his son first. Secondly, this morning I want us to examine the fact that love extends grace. Love extends grace. Where humility will seek it, love gives it. Luke 15:22-24, this is what the father did in response to his son's return. "But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead." This son of mine was dead, and he's alive again. He was lost and is found, and so they began to celebrate. How did the father respond? He responded with love. He extended grace. He offered restoration. He did not just say, "Yeah, you can be my slave, you can be my servant, you can come to work for me." He said, "Hey, you're my son. You will always be my son. You are going to be my son." The person was more important to him than any punishment that he could have inflicted. The relationship was more important than any kind of revenge that he could have had. And the joy that he felt in offering restoration to his son was more important than any judgment he could have passed on him. Fellowship supersedes fairness where grace is concerned. What would have been fair is for the son to come back and be made a servant. What would have been fair is for him to have to earn everything. And yet, he was given the best robes, a ring on his finger, a big celebration. Love extends grace. If no grace is extended, it isn't love. Conversely, if love extends grace, if what we have for other people is something that will not extend grace to them, we really don't love them. Grace is about putting others first, is what Jesus did for us. Put our need above even his glory. He stepped down from his glory to take on flesh. He put our need above his pain. For he looked forward to the cross. It says, for the joy set before him. The joy that would come after the pain. He endured the pain. It's about putting others first. That's what grace is. Thirdly, this morning I want us to visit the fact that selfishness denies grace. Selfishness denies grace, and this is where we get into this older son, the first son. In 28 through 32, we see his response now to the father's grace for the wayward son. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. I'm not going to the party. I'm not going to go to the party. I'm sorry. So his father went out and pleaded with him. And he answered his father. He said, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never even gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, not my brother, this son of yours, some wives and husbands have said that to each other, I think, sometimes when the other gets home and they're expressing their displeasure with the kid's behavior. This son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes come homes, and you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you're always with me. Everything I have is yours, but we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And this kind of celebration takes place in heaven when people come to know Christ. And I think this kind of celebration takes place in heaven when we as Christians, followers of Christ, extend grace and forgiveness to others, that they might understand God's grace through people. See, selfishness denies grace. Selfishness is all about the right to see people get theirs. Selfishness validates our own good behavior as we compare ourselves to others and compare our good works to their bad works. And that's what we do. We don't compare other people's sins to our sins because we see nothing but sin on both sides. We compare how good we think we are to how bad we think they are. Selfishness allows us our fair payment when we're wrong. And selfishness only denies grace to others. It desires grace for ourselves. Selfishness denies grace. This father could have been selfish. He wasn't. He extended grace. And we find out that in the first part of the story where we thought the younger son was the selfish one and the older son was the good boy, we find out at the end of the story that the older son thinks he's the good boy. And he shows his selfishness. Selfishness denies grace because grace is all about putting others first. Finally, this morning, let's take a look at the fact that God takes grace seriously. That's one of the reasons Jesus told this parable. Part of the reason for the parable is for us to understand God's grace to us and his ability to receive us no matter what we've done. But it's very important. It was communicated. This imperative about grace is communicated through the Son of God himself. God takes grace seriously. And he had words about that in Matthew chapter 6, verses 14 and 15. And it's at the end of what we have come to know as the Lord's Prayer. After the end of that